This railroad was built as a passenger hauling railroad, not a freight railroad. And it would bring the families to all the numerous large hotels that were here at that time. The gentlemen, of course, were the bread earners, worked in New York City and Weehawken, and they would put their kids, their wife and children on the train, send them to the Catskills where they would spend a week, and on weekends they would board the train. The men would board the train, ride to the Catskills, spend a weekend with their families, and then Sunday night they would board the train and go back to the city. But this railroad was built strictly to haul passengers. This is our regular everyday tourist train that we use. This consists right here. The 3 coaches were multiple unit cars, they call them, MU electric cars, that served the Pennsylvania Railroad and later the Southeast Pennsylvania Transit Authority as commuter cars. The 2 flat cars are marble hauling flat cars that we acquired from the Otter Valley, defunct Otter Valley tourist operation. And their use was they had the benches built, and that's what they used them for, is to pull their tourists on their tourist train. So these 2 cars have seen tourist operations, and the 3 coaches went from commuter use to tourist use, and that's how we got them. These 3 cars that we acquired from the Acadian Railroad, we found out through a locomotive broker, or I should say not just locomotive, but a railroad equipment broker. And that's how we acquire all our stuff, is knowing somebody that knows somebody, or the internet. It's extremely hard to transport, and it's very, very costly to transport. We currently operate on 12 miles of track from Arkville to Roxbury, milepost 48 to almost milepost 60. We do have another 7 miles of track on the east end from Arkville to Highmount, which at some point we hope to be able to reactivate. We used to run that way, but we've had some washout problems, embankment problems, and now we got some big brush problems, so that when money becomes available, we hope to reactivate that line, which will give us almost a 20-mile one-way or a 40-mile round trip. So railroads, as a matter of fact, have been lack a great deal of 20/20 foresight. If they could abandon a piece of rail back in the 80s, they did it without any forethought thoughts of the future whatsoever. I mean, a case in point was this railroad. If I want to go back, in 1948, the track foreman, New York Central track foreman in Kingston, informed his section gang foreman at that time to come up and start loosening all the angle bars, bolts on this railroad from Kingston to Oneonta to increase the amount of maintenance required, so that the cost of maintenance would skyrocket. Which would give them more ammunition to go to at that time, the ICC for abandonment. So the railroads were responsible for a lot of their own demise back in those days, and it's been a struggle for them to start to realize that that wasn't such a good idea, because now they're being forced to put track back in that they removed 20 years ago at quadruple the cost if they had left it there and rehabbed it. So railroads have been very lack in 20/20 foresight. We need to, number one, not let any more railroads fade into the woodwork, if you want to use the word. We need to support any active movement, bills, bonds, whatever is necessary to reestablish railroads. We need railroads, and as we go more and more into the future, railroads are going to be more and more in demand, because there is no other way to move massive amounts of freight as economically as there is with a railroad.